don't have to do the team updates in the order specified. We can get started and stuff if we want to. Mhm. I see Harry's in the audience. I don't know if he wants to jump on as well, but yeah, it's not showing up, Sally. We'll have to. No, I'm not seeing it. Anyone else seeing it? I'm not seeing it at the deck at all. I can see you. I can see you, but I can't see anything else. But maybe we go. Okay, yeah, I see it
All
now.
right, I see it too. We're good.
Oh, I see. Oh, okay. That's okay. That's bizarre.
Sure. I'll keep it brief. So, yeah, didn't get as much done in December as I expected. Thought the holiday break I'd have time, but no, time gets swallowed up during the holiday. So, not as much done there as I'd like, but we're very close on having a PR to submit to the public repo that is basically all the DX12 support, which includes Xbox support. we're trying to put as much as possible in the public repository so that it is shared with console, so that improvements on either side help each other since it's the same core API. That's currently what I'm fighting through. I started looking at PlayStation and getting that set up for the new native backend, but it's not quite ready to submit anything yet. But it's getting closer. But mostly, I'm just trying to get the DirectX 12 stuff done. Once that's done, I'll go back to PlayStation, finish that out for both. I guess we'll still deal with PlayStation 4 as well as 5 for now. And then after that, I'm going to cycle all the way back to the beginning and start fleshing out more of the console APIs that are kind of missing at the moment, because there's still some stuff missing in some of the core console releases. Just stuff that was never there on the first pass. Now that I'm working more full time on consoles for the foundation, I'm going to make sure that those get fleshed out. But yeah, that's basically where we're at. Yep. 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 People trying the Vulkan backend is helpful. Once the DX12 backend is in place, people testing that as well will be helpful to fleshing out issues. Also, we expect that the second that we can say something, that will be supporting the new Switch whenever it is announced. So that'll be something that'll be upcoming in the coming who knows how much time, but that should be another thing that we'll be looking forward to moving forward. Yeah.
Yeah, so the quick update is that the basic start kit, which is essentially an empty start kit with some essential plumbing, is done. I went through and commented pretty much. I'm pretty sure I've got like 99% coverage on classes and methods in terms of comments and what they're doing, so that people can understand how everything fits together. Obviously, the 2D game start kit is it's a bit bigger, so that's going to take a little bit more while. I don't think he's in the chat, but shout out to Square Bananas for pointing me out to an old XNA post, which actually added a few of the features that I had put in the PR that maybe the community could add, which was things like power-ups and also parallax scrolling. So rather than reinvent it, I'll have to see what's required for that to go in. And then once that's in, hopefully other members of the team will have time to go through and just look at what the best practices are that we could streamline in that 2D start kit, and then it'll be ready to go out. That's basically the update there. I think next thing was the 3.83 release. We're really close. We've got a 3D modeling processor issue where the 3D models, because we've switched to a new version of Async, and it's giving us a little bit of weird behavior. Correct me if I'm wrong here, Harry, in the chat. And we're trying to find out why the models aren't rendering correctly. But everything else for 3.8.3 looks fairly solid. Obviously, we'd like obviously people to test it and stuff, but it's just a 3D issue at the moment, and that's basically it. If Dean was here, I was hoping to get some updates on the store to see how that's doing, but he's not around. So maybe we can hand over to Vic potentially.
Hello, can you guys hear me? Yeah.
Hey, we can hear you.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, should I get started?
Sure.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, my name's Vic. I've been in MonoGame for a long time. I've actually been a user of MonoGame even before MonoGame was really a thing, because I started on XNA. And I've been making tools for XNA and MonoGame over 20 years now. Been doing it for a long time. So today I'm going to be talking about the GUM tool, which is one of the main tools that I work on. The other one some of you have probably heard of is Flat Red Ball. I'm not going to be talking about that today. Maybe some point in the future, we'll see. But yeah, I can screen share and get started. Do that. All right, is that coming through okay?
Yes.
All right, cool. All right, yeah, so like I said, I'm going to be talking about GUM today. And I'll be giving a pretty high-level introduction to GUM. It's kind of tough to fit a decade worth of work in 15 minutes, but I'll do my best. I'm also going to try to keep a timer going if I can get it started here. I'm actually I'm not sure why I know one. Okay, cool.
Quickly, Vic, feel free to extend it to 20 minutes if you want. If you have
okay, all right, then I'll just be a little more relaxed. Also, this is the last piece of AI art that I'll be showing, so you guys don't have to worry for the rest of the presentation. So let's get started. For those who don't know, GUM is when we talk about GUM, there's a few things we're talking about. And the first is the GUM UI layout tool. So this is an application that you'd run on your machine. It's a WYSIWYG editor, and I'll be demoing that a little bit today. And you can use it to make pretty much any kind of UI you would ever want to make for a game. The second thing that we talk about when we talk about GUM is something called forms. And this is a name that we actually borrowed from Xamarin Forms back when that was a thing. But it's basically a framework for UI. It includes buttons, text boxes, things like that. And if you're familiar with WPF, Xamarin Forms, Avalonia, Maui, basically any of the C# front ends, then you'll find GUM Forms very familiar. It's based to be very similar to that. The third thing is that GUM is a screen space layout engine. So what that means is that at the very bottom of GUM, below MonoGame, before really any rendering API, there's a library that you can use that allows you to say, I want something centered, I want something stacked, I want text to wrap, I want things docked to the bottom right of their parent, and I want the parent to resize according to its children. Basically, these kind of abstract layout concepts, you can use this really in any kind of API. So, and again, I'll show some demos of that, but it's not tied specifically to MonoGame. And the point here is that MonoGame really is a bunch of layers of technology, and then you can choose which layer you want to dive in depending on what you need for your game. So if you want really high level, I want buttons and text boxes to just work out of the box, you can get that. Or if you're like, no, I have my own rendering and I want to make sure that I'm not introducing state changes or, unintentional layout calls or whatever, well, then you can go a little bit lower and use the screen space layout engine. And of course, everything's open source, MIT license, so not restrictive at all. You can do whatever you want with it. So first, if we look at the GUM layout tool, here's a screenshot of what a typical project might look like. This is actually a game that I'm working on. And you can see here on the right side, it's what you see is what you get editor, and it actually is pretty darn accurate. One of the goals for GUM, I used to work at EA, and we had our own tools there. And one of the things that would happen at EA is that we would work on, say, Madden football. And if you looked at what the game actually looked like and what the UI tools looked like, it was so different because so much was modified at runtime. We try to not do that. This is the exact same layout engine running. In this case, it's actually actual XNA, which is kind of crazy, I know. At some point, we're going to be updating that to MonoGame. But anyway, it's all object-oriented, which means you can create reusable components. We support inheritance, which is really cool. So you can create a base button class, and then you can derive from that if you need to. And then we have a pretty powerful variable system that allows you to set variables at different levels. You can override them. You can set them per instance or at the component level. And again, I'll briefly show that. And of course, it's all game focused. So this isn't something like Figma, which is a general purpose layout tool. That's not to say you couldn't use it for other things. And in fact, it has been used outside of game contexts. But if you're wanting something that is specifically tailored for games and actually for MonoGame, this is definitely the way to go. So I'm going to show a quick demo of the GUM tool. So this is the GUM tool right here. This is that screenshot or that application that I was showing earlier. This is the Cranky Chibi game that I'm working on. You can see here on the left, this is, I'd say, fairly typical, maybe a little bit of a large project just because this project's been in development for a while. And in this case, I have a lot of screens that aren't used. This game is being built with Flat Red Ball as well, which keeps Flat Red Ball and GUM in sync. So in some cases, it creates additional screens that you don't necessarily need. So a real game that's not Flat Red Ball probably wouldn't have so many screens. But anyway, you can see in this case, we have a title screen. And inside of that, if I start mousing over here, you can see I'm highlighting things. So it's real easy to know what I'm going to select. For example, this single player button. And then when you select something, you have lots and lots of variables that you can control how it works. You can edit here. Like, for example, I can just grab this and move it. Or in this case, if I wanted this to be bottom left aligned, I could just say, oh, I want that to be right here and move it up. And again, you can see I'm anchored to the bottom left. There's this line right here that lets me easily control that regardless of resolution. For example, on Steam Deck, it's a weird 16:10 aspect ratio. This would account for that. And everything can be super responsive, which is really cool. There's a really powerful hierarchy system here. So like these buttons right here are actually using, instead of having to position each one individually, say this is my X, this is my Y value, you can see I'm relative to the bottom of the screen. That's what this line is saying right here. And then within there, in this case, I stack my children top to bottom with a stack spacing of 8 pixels between each one. So I can dynamically say, oh, I want to squash them a little bit more, or I want them more separated. All of that is really easy to control. Pretty powerful stuff. And in the case of components, I'll just show you this real quick. Here's an example of what our game screen looks like. And here we have 2 player HUD objects, which are actually the same component or instances of the same component. You can see I have one here. And just like in Visual Studio, if you push F12, you can go to definition and see what that is all about. And you can, of course, just modify individual variables, but you can also create states, which are basically combined variables together so that you have an expressive way to say, oh, this one is going to be for player 1, or this is going to be for player 2. Or in this case right here, you can see we show this green sphere right here is supposed to show you your power up level. And let's see if I can find that. So we have power up level 1, 2, 3, 4. And so if I just select these, instead of having to worry about texture coordinates, I can just come in here and set up these states. And all of these things can be just assigned with one line of code at runtime. So pretty easy to work with. Of course, we support animations. You can see this button flashing right here and this guy right here doing his animation thing. So that should give you a really high level idea of what GUM is all about, at least in a game context. So moving on. The second thing I talked about is forms. So like I mentioned, forms is bringing all of the kinds of controls that you would expect in a non-game UI framework, but bringing it into games. And so this is a screenshot right here of a game that is actually using forms. This isn't like something I mocked up. This is a real life game, and you can see we have list boxes and items in here. In this case, these would be components that are custom built, which of course you can combine your own components with standard ones. Buttons, tabs. I guess you don't see it here, but there's a little close button up here. So again, this screen is, I'd say 99% of the pixels on here are GUM. So just to give you an idea. At runtime, it is based off of WPF. So if you're used to WPF or Avalonia, you'll find this super easy to work with. We also support MVVM binding, which is really cool and really powerful if you're familiar with that. Makes it real easy to just create one view model and then control or multiple view models if you need to, and control all of your UI with that. Really easy to do. And it's fully customizable. I want to call that out because I know a lot of people use IMG UI for their games, which is really powerful. But I know that that's not as easy to style. So you may not necessarily want to make your final UI with that. Literally everything that you see here can be customized in the GUM tool. Pretty much any forms object really is just a GUM control under the hood. And so anything can be modified. And GUM is not very particular about what you include in your controls. So typically a button might have a 9 slice in a text object, but it doesn't have to. You could have your buttons just be a rectangle or a label or a SVG if you're using Skia. There's really no limitations on that. And finally, it can be code first or GUM first. GUM first meaning you would do your layouts in the GUM tool. Code first meaning you don't want to use the GUM tool at all. And you can just go in and say var button equals new button, button.click plus equals, and then just go from there. So to show you again a quick demo. I have lots of windows open here, so I'm trying to juggle them. So here is, actually this is a sample project that's part of the GUM repository. So if you were to download GUM, you could open this up and look at it. In this case, you can see I have things like sliders, for example. And in this case, it's just another component. There's really nothing special about this. I have them stacked top to bottom, so I have some layout going on here. But ultimately, there's nothing that differentiates these buttons or these sliders from anything else that would be a normal GUM component, with the exception of, if I go to definition here, you'll see that this button right here, which is actually made up of a background 9 slice, I'll zoom in a little bit, a text instance, which is sitting here in the middle, and then this focused indicator, which you can see it highlighted, but it's actually invisible right now because the button isn't showing it. Really, the only requirements when you're working with forms is that there are these set of states that you must have. And technically, you don't even have to have them, but usually you want to. And what will happen is, behind the scenes when your app is running, based on whether you're clicking on something or if it's disabled or the mouse is hovering or your gamepad is doing something, the GUM forms will just assign these states. So you can see I have, for example, my enabled state, or I can have my disabled state, or what it looks like when it's highlighted or pushed, or highlighted and focused, or just focused without being highlighted. And so, again, this is where the flexibility comes in with styling, because if you wanted to, for instance, say, oh, I would like anytime my button is highlighted, I would like the text instance to be just a little bit bigger. So I'll put a font scale of 1.5, for instance. Then that's all you would have to do. And then at runtime, this is what your button would look like normal. And then when you mouse over it, it would look like that. So super easy to style. I also have this screen. Sorry, I should show them side by side if I can. I have this screen right here. So I'll zoom out a little bit more so you can see both, running in a MonoGame project. This is just a raw MonoGame project. And you can see the layout is identical. The only difference in this case is, well, I have the cornflower blue background, and these are kind of transparent, so that's why these are tinted blue. But the second thing is I've populated some of the UI in code. So here I have this text box that's showing some resolutions that I've just typed in. I'm using the mouse wheel right now to go through them. You can see it's fully functional list box. I can grab these things. Again, I have a checkbox that I can actually check. It's not hooked up to actually run in full screen. It's just kind of an example. Sliders, click and hold, radio buttons, drop downs. In this case, I'm showing some binding examples. I have this is button enabled, or if I check it, these two are bound to the same Boolean property. So that's kind of neat that it just works. And I have a text box. How cool is this? If I can spell it. And of course, we have highlighting and, full backspace, select,
Yes.
paste, and a password box. Also, I have, see if this works, I have a gamepad right here. We just recently added gamepad control. So if you can see, there's a little line that I'm moving around right here to select things. And I can left, right on the sliders, change these. You can pick a drop down or pick from a list box like that. So this is an example of some recently added features. And I guess I'll just take this opportunity to mention that one of the great things about using GUM, if you decide to use this in your project, is that it's probably the most active MonoGame tool in existence. I think I can say that fairly confidently. We have commits, I don't know, half a dozen commits every single day. We have releases maybe 2 times a month, bug fixes all the time. And I listen to the community all the time. So if you come in and say, hey, my game really needs this, I need to have feature X, I don't know what it is. Usually I'll be like, yeah, I can implement that. I think there's a few people in the chat that can give thumbs up to that and confirm that that's the case. So anyway, that's an example of it working here in MonoGame. Last thing I want to talk about is the layout engine. And so what you see here is a screenshot of the GUM layout engine using a totally custom rendering engine on it's called a Meadow, which for those of you who aren't familiar, it's an Arduino that can run .NET. So the actual rendering is some other library. Actually, I think one of the creators is here in the chat, Justin, and he can talk about it if anyone's interested. But again, it's using the C#, it's actually a C# layout engine. And so everything you see here is stacked top to bottom. It's using all of the alignments, all of the sprites and containers and colored rectangles and so on. And I actually have a YouTube video. I'll just show it for like just 2 seconds. I know that watching a video of on a demo is not the most exciting thing, but I'll just kind of show you. You can see here, I know my frame rate's not the best, but you can see here the creator. Oh man, I'm already at 15 minutes. You can see the creator here is actually interacting with this in real time, and again, it's just using GUM. I will link this video for anyone who's interested, but if you fast forward a little bit, he actually shows how he did the layout in GUM. And in this case, one of the things that's kind of neat is that he was actually limited on I/O capability, so he was not able to load the GUM project from disk. And if you see here at the bottom of the screen, there's actually a real-time code generator that's running while you're working in GUM. And so if for whatever reason you don't want to do file I/O, maybe it's slow, or you just don't have permission or access or whatever, you can actually do a fully generated code generated setup and then just not do any file I/O at all, which is really cool. You can actually see these values are updating. This is also a great way to learn the GUM tool. Like if you're just like, oh, I see how to lay things out here, but how would I do this in code? You just look at the bottom and it shows you. So it's pretty neat. And yeah, that's it. So this is the main website right here, docs.flatredball.com/GUM. And again, I'll throw those links in the chat after I'm finished in case anyone wants to check it out. We have, I don't know, dozens, if not hundreds of pages of documentation. It might be, I would say it's one of the best documented tools out there as well. So yeah, if you're interested at all, please tag me, check it out. I'm in the MonoGame chat all the time. You can DM me. And of course, we also have a Flat Red Ball Discord. So there's lots of ways to reach out, find out more, check it out. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vic, for being our first community presenter. I've got a question. Since we're now moving into question time, do you support multi-languages?
Sorry, do I support what? Multi-languages? Is that what you said?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, the fact that it's a NuGet package, by the nature of it being .NET, would support other languages. There's actually someone in the community using Visual Basic right now with it. So yes, in that sense. But the code generator that's built into GUM right now only spits out C#. GUM has a pretty powerful plugin system, so that could be added in the future as well.
I was actually that's good, but I was actually wondering if you support like French, other international languages rather than programming languages, and I'm guessing so because it's all .NET.
I guess you mean localization specifically.
Localization, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Actually, that's a good question. One of the things that you can do in GUM is you can create what we call a localization database, which is just a CSV file where each column is your language, and then you have string IDs. And so you can actually, if you do that and you type in your string ID like T_hello, it will resolve that in real time in the tool. And then you can just swap. I want to see everything in Spanish. I want to see everything in French. I want to see everything. And it just updates in real time, does all of your
Nice.
layouts so you don't have like surprise wrapping and stuff like that. So yes, that's the long answer. The short answer is yes, we do.
Excellent.
With that, what are you using to store your localized text? Is there a specific format you're using?
Yeah, so the localized text is a CSV file. So it's just comma separated values. And we've thought about supporting regex and things like that, but just no one asked for it, so we just haven't done it.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. In our experience, most games, most indie titles especially, alternate between XML or CSV or something totally custom or JSON files or just a plain text file. We've seen everything, so that totally makes sense. The one thing that we haven't seen a lot of is old regex files or resx files.
Yeah. And I can hang out on the call if other people have questions. If not, I'll just sit here silently.
Yep. So if anybody has any more questions, looks like Simon's lost his mic or similar, or his voice. So if anybody has any other questions, please type it in the chat so we can put it out there for Vic or Tom or whoever.
Well, actually, I do see a question right now. Is there, Ice Reaper asks, is there some styling skin system with variables? So one could define a standard color, font size, margin, etc., so that they don't have to create a bunch of controls. Yeah, the answer to that is yes, and there's a few ways that you can do that. One way that you can do that is, since everything is hierarchy based, you can go into your base objects, for example, your text object, and you can say, okay, we're going to have header 1, 2, 3, paragraph, subtitle, whatever, and you can create those as states inside of your base component. And then when you create instances of it, you just say, okay, this is a header 1, this is a header 2, and of course that applies all of the variables. The second way that you can do it is, I didn't show this, but we have these things that are variable references, and they work kind of like variable references do or cell references do if you've used Excel, where you can basically say font size equals, and then you can reference a different component's font size. And so what I've done in the past is I've actually created one component that has all of the colors, all of the font sizes, margins, etc. It'd be the way that you would, create CSS or whatever, but you're doing everything visually so you can see it on the spot. And then you just reference the variables that you care about. And again, you can do this in common components and then reuse those components. But then the nice thing is that if you have one color, that color can be used across 20 different components. And if you say, oh, I'd like my blue to be a lighter shade, you go into that one spot, modify it, and it just propagates throughout the entire project. So I hope that answers your question, Ice Reaper.
I don't know if Simon seems to have appeared. I don't know if he's got his mic back. He was asking if it requires flat rate ball and MonoGame, but I think you clarified that you can use either. It's not tied specifically to flat rate ball.
Right, and I'll just add to this real quick. Gum has been around for over 10 years, and for a lot of that time, it was a flat red ball only project, which is why a lot of people here probably haven't heard it or used it. And then about a year and a half ago, we started to generalize that and rip out, actually not just XNA and MonoGame, we ripped out everything so that it's just platform agnostic. And then we created a layer specifically for MonoGame, and that's actually what I've been focused on for the past few months now, is just trying to make it work as seamlessly as possible for a MonoGame. No flat red ball required.
Presently, presumably the WYSIWYG only works on Windows right now, so there's no cross-platform WYSIWYG yet.
Yeah, that's mostly true. Chris or Aristotle has gotten it working on Mac, and he's created a guide for that. But you have to use Wine, I believe. So it's there. It's not great. The plan, of course, is to get rid of XNA, bring in MonoGame for our rendering of the editor tab, and then replace everything that's Windows specific with Avalonia, and then it would work on Linux and Mac. But that's out there a little bit.
Professor X is answering a lot of the dumb questions in the chat, providing links, etc.
See, I see another question from Elvin Princess, who says, can Gum be used with something like XML or XAML without having to use the WYSIWYG editor or C# for defining the UI? Currently, no. I'm personally really experienced with XAML and I like it, but we've never brought that over. But you can, like Professor Geek said, you can use it entirely in code. Sorry, I don't mean to dominate this. I'm just going through the questions, but Dom, you can stop me at any point if I'm out of hand here, Adeline.
Okay. Yeah, the next one's from Simon, if you can see that one.
I see one from Ice Reaper right now that says, I guess render to texture is supported in Gum, like working GUIs rendered on a quad. Yeah, so when you're working with Gum, the easiest way to work with Gum is you just use a single draw call, and you can throw that anywhere you want in your draw call, including after you set your render targets. So you could set a render target, draw Gum, and then you have that. You can go one level deeper, and there's actually a class called Gum Batch, which is very similar to Sprite Batch in MonoGame. And the idea with Gum Batch is that you could draw anything in Gum in a single line of code, and it will draw at that point. It's essentially immediate mode drawing. And so if you wanted to use Gum just for the font rendering, for instance, or if you had a particular component and you wanted to make sure it sorts just right in your code, then you would use Gum Batch and you just throw that right in. So that allows you to do really anything, and that includes rendering to render targets. I see Simon says, is there a dedicated forum for Gum, or should I ask on MonoGame Discord or GitHub discussions? Yeah, so we're using GitHub issues for discussions, and like you said, Discord is a great place as well. I've been able to keep on top of the questions in those channels, and so I really haven't extended it beyond that. If things were to get out of hand, then maybe we would create forums or something. And I've actually never tried Discord forums, so maybe those would work. I don't know. And I think that is the last question, so I will shut up now.
Any other questions, I guess, from the for anybody?
I did say that, but I was muted.
Yep, that happens.
Anyone? Bueller? Okay, here we go. Square Bananas is asking, I missed the start. Our last bounty was probably, did new ones get mentioned at all? Simon mentioned that a few bounties are still being worked on, but one particular bounty may have to be removed from somebody who's currently assigned to, because they don't seem to have the cycles to be able to complete it. So we may have to pull that one back in and then ask if anybody else wants to take over. Correct me if I'm wrong, Simon. I'm assuming you can hear.
Yeah, unfortunately, Simon can't talk, but he can hear. Yeah, and on my side of things, we're needing to post some new bounties. We're aware of that. Specifically, there's some bounties towards the pipeline that we want to start posting. So that'll be something that'll happen here very soon. And we're always looking for suggestions for other bounties.
Yeah, Simon's just linked to, if you have a look in the chat, Simon's just linked to the bounties page, which the current bounties that have either been finished or that are in progress. Aristotle also posted an update further in the chat with regards to the bounty he's working on, which is progressing nicely. There's a few people typing, so give them a few minutes. We've still got another 15 minutes left. So, Square Bananas is asking, is the draft DX12 project in a branch yet? I think that's for you, Tom.
It's local to me. I haven't pushed anything yet. I've been a little careful pushing stuff because I want to be sure that I don't push anything to the public repo that shouldn't be in the public repo. While it is DX12, but it is standard, there's always questions about what we can share and what we can't. So I've been careful with that, but I'll be pushing one here soon so that everybody can see it. And I'll put up a draft, basically a draft PR, so we can get some feedback on it and stuff. Because it'll be an important one.
Still waiting to see if there's any more questions. Too many more, we might end up having a shorter AMA this month. That's all right, Simon.
Also, anybody is interested in, we're looking to add more people to these AMAs as well, bring in other devs and stuff. If people have suggestions for other people they'd like to talk to or like to have present stuff here, let us know. We're always looking for more content.
Yep, definitely. Yep. I was going to wait to the end to suggest that, but yeah, that's definitely the case. So please get in contact with one of the team if you're interested in presenting in a future AMA.
So another question there, has there been any thought of rewriting the MGCB editor? I don't know. I mean, the thought at the moment is whether the editor needs to exist at all, because it was never an editor. When we first set it up, when it was first set up, it was a project that we had internally in our studio that we were using for managing XNA content projects, because we didn't want to do it from we didn't want to have artists install Visual Studio, so we had our own tool kind of build content and do stuff, and that became what was the core of that editor originally, or the MGCB tool in the original form of it. And then it evolved into something using the Edo form stuff, and that was there. And then the idea was that we'd have a plugin system, and you could have visualizers for visualizing PNGs and compressed files and sprite sheets, and extend it with more and more content to really make it an actual editor of content, not just a management of the content pipeline. But that never happened. So at times you have to take how the community handled things and how things progressed as what the need was. So since no one seemed interested in pushing in that direction and no one had the time to push in that direction, we kind of were making the assumption now that that's really not a need. And it also kind of goes against MonoGame in some ways. We're not trying to build editors and engines. We're trying to build reusable components that can be quickly used to develop your own tools and your own engines and your own games. So yeah, I don't see that being something that we jump into again. Um, we're looking to make the pipeline more reliable and quick and more integrated with the core of MonoGame, and easy to use at runtime for development purposes. But I don't know about a new editor like that. So I don't know. It's always up for debate, and if people are interested enough, the foundation can take it on. But at this point on it, I just don't know that there's that much interest.
Square Bananas was saying that he saw 2 to 3 MonoGame open source games posted recently, made by VR Game Studio and Orgs. And if anybody's keeping a list, we're not keeping a list of engines or games as such, because there's so many projects. Unless we only kept, say, a list of published games. So there's none at the moment, but maybe that's something we need to look into down the line. But it just depends how active those open source games and projects are. But we need to highlight it so that other members know about it.
It wouldn't be a bad idea to, just talking openly here, like it wouldn't be a bad idea to maybe proactively put those things into the existing showcase, of those things and link directly to the open source project, just so that people are aware that it exists and it links straight to the open source. We can even tag some of them as open source in the showcase so people can go straight there and find existing open source games that they can actually work from or just learn from, right?
Indeed.
I mean, that kind of falls into kind of our desire to expand the showcase to go beyond just code or beyond games, but also to include some libraries as well. Because the question comes up like, well, what UI libraries should we use? What libraries should we use for models or for collision and things like that? Like, we don't really have an organization to have we don't have a setup to post those things, and I think we do need that. I think it helps the MonoGame ecosystem if you can go there and say like, oh, well, I can use this collision library. People have used it. It'd be nice if there were ratings or some feedback there or links to the right places for them. Like, those are the things we'd like to do to kind of put some more emphasis on the ecosystem of different tools that you can use within MonoGame, including things like Gum and other tools. So I believe that that's the path that we want to head down. And I think that we're just going to, last time we had I think we discussed it at one of our meetings that
we did,
that I think the best path forward is probably just expanding on the existing showcase instead of trying to make another thing. Just the showcase is a different category that's like, components or libraries or something that you can use to get to these other elements. So something along those lines.
Mr. Scope Creep was saying people on Mac keep hitting a wall with editor and build content. Yeah, that was definitely a case with the new Apple Silicon, but we've got that working, and it's essentially will be out with the 3.83 release. But if people want to play with that or are having trouble with that right now on Apple Silicon, you can grab the dev builds and nougats, etc., and that should work because I'm using Apple Silicon myself, and it works for me here, building MGCB projects locally here. Hope that answers your question. Few people saw Simon and Mr. Creep typing. You've got about another 5 or 6 minutes left, so please, questions if you've got them. Okay. Simon, benefits. Are you on benefits? Joking, but what do you mean? Sorry, my brain's not processing the benefits reference there.
As far as things about the Mac and building content, a lot of that I think a lot of that stuff falls into the documentation, which I'm sure Simon would love to talk about, but he can't at the moment. But yeah, I mean, having some more. I mean, we could have some general like question and answer FAQ, troubleshooting kind of guide, in the docs to help out anybody that's gotten stuck in some way building content, especially on Mac where it's a little bit trickier at the moment. I mean, we're always trying to make that process smoother, but it's, we're always thwarted by the fact that, there's not as many Mac player users. There's not, Mac seems to change direction on their hardware a lot, causing us to scramble and figure things out, late. If we had a bigger budget and Mac was, a bigger percentage of the audience, we could maybe dedicate some time and funding there. But a lot of times, we're tied up with the main audience, which is Windows users, and making sure that things are working well there. But we do spend time on it, and we don't want to omit Mac users and stuff. So we've been careful not to. I mean, I'm always ship, but we've held back a couple of releases, just waiting on getting something fixed on Mac and Linux. Let's see. So I was looking at Scribanana's post there of the pipeline versus no pipeline in FNA. I mean, FNA has some good ideas in that regard as well. We've been kind of militant about pipeline only, but I mean that's for good reason. Is because we have experience with consoles where you can't do the things that FNA does, and in those places they have to do something different. That's why we go with pipeline, where we know it'll work everywhere. That's why Unity and Unreal have big pipelines that pre-build content. That said, we could be more flexible. And one of our, guides moving forward here is to make things more flexible so that you can lazily not use the pipeline when you're working on a desktop. And then when you finally figure out that you need to go to a console or to another platform and that the lazy path is not very fast and the lazy path sometimes is just not possible on that platform, then hopefully we've done it in a way that you can easily recover without having to do a lot of work on your side to fix it. If you do it in a poor way, like if you build your whole game around the concept of calling texture load from stream, and that's how your whole game works, and you're loading JPEGs, and then you realize, wait a second, it's using too much memory, and I need to switch it to something compressed. And then you go, okay, well, I'll make it PNGs instead, and you realize, oh, well, that doesn't actually compress it in memory, and that doesn't help me, so I need a different compression. I need a DXT compression of some sort. It's like, oh, the pipeline does it. It's like, oh, I need to switch to using content pipeline load, to do that switch. That's when you realize, oh, I did it the wrong way. And we're hopefully going to make it where you can just use content pipeline load and not have to worry about that. I think there's a PR for that, or we've already submitted something for at least textures there. We want to do more stuff like that and just make it painless to use it, with raw files when you need to, and for development purposes, and eventually be able to adapt towards the pipeline and pre-building your content later. And some of the stuff that Harry wants to work on moving forward is also fits into that vein. So we have plans there.
Possibly the last question, I don't know, from Square Bananas is, it's a DX12 question. Will audio be via X Audio 2 still?
That's a good question. I mean, I've never been a big fan of OpenAL. X Audio 2 just works. It's simple and is useful. There was an idea of moving over to FNA's F Audio as a core component to get us audio everywhere, mostly because it provided a good exact implementation, that was performant and was more accurate than our implementation. They started with our implementation, forked it off, started doing improvements, then eventually moved it to a native code implementation. So it's a good implementation and a good path. So that's what we were talking about F Audio. That said, I'm unsure if that's the right path moving forward or not. So it's still kind of up in the air. We'd love to hear suggestions on it. How we're building the back end. In theory, you could swap out the different back ends. So you could use X Audio, you could use OpenAL. The native back end should allow us to plug in different low-level back ends. But the question is, what's the right decision there? I mean, the truth is that most every modern game uses Fmod or some variant or something very similar to that at this point. With built-in game engine audio is not super flexible. That could be an area that XNA was ahead of the curve with Exact. Exact was like the great granddaddy of Fmod and tools like that. One of the first ones to provide like a place where a sound engineer could go in there and design sounds and design, how sound should play, and then have the game just say, hey, play this audio cue. I don't care what it does. If it randomizes or loops or what, I don't care what it does. I just tell it to go play. And that was a cool thing, but it's so dusty and outdated that it seems hard to push it forward. And while we've talked to the old XNA team and Microsoft about trying to get that code out of Microsoft, the old Exact tool and stuff like that, we've kind of been met with problems because that tool has a lot of proprietary software in there that they can't just give to us. So that tool ever being open source will probably never happen. Who knows? Maybe one day they'll give up and say it's not important anymore. Sure, but I don't think that code will ever see the light of day. And if there's not a tool, it becomes less valuable. So, and it's hard to maintain that old tool at this point. It still runs on Windows, which is a testament to how awesome Windows is, but because that thing's 20 plus years old at this point. But yeah, without that, it seems like Exact is not a good solution, and Fmod is pretty reasonably priced for indies and small studios. So it seems like the right decision forward. Is just a question of like how much functionality do we need in our audio system, and it could just be just the what we have as a basis now, which a lot of games will ship just using. They'll write their own audio library on top of XNA APIs, but it could be that that's all we need, and using Xaudio 2 Xaudio 2 and using OpenAL's backends is enough, and that we don't really need Xact as much. And maybe Xact support isn't super critical, and maybe that's something we need to retire to a certain extent. So yeah, I mean, I'm not sure what direction we're taking on that, but it's something that has to be solved, because that's the last part that's really missing in our new native backend, is making a decision on audio backends and how we're going to integrate that.
I think that's it today. Thanks everyone for joining us, and let those who've missed that, Simon will upload the video of this AMA to our YouTube channel. So yeah, thanks again everyone, and see you all next month.
Well, thanks, Vic.
Thanks, Vic, for the great presentation. Bye.